Hello, today we're going to work on volume, especially for rectangular prisms and cylinders. Even though these aren't the only shapes that you would want to find volume for, if you understand how to do it for these shapes, it'll definitely help you figure it out for other shapes because in the end it's just plugging into a formula. So if you definitely understand how to find the volume for these two shapes, it will help you for all the other shapes as well. So what is volume? Well, volume is the measure of space that's occupied by a solid, and it's measured in cubic units. So for example, if you had a cylinder, and there's a cylinder that I just drew, the volume would be all the space that it occupies. So everything inside the cylinder, all the space that it takes up would be the volume. And for a rectangular prism, all the space that it takes up, everything inside would be the volume. So to find the volume of a rectangular prism, you have to multiply the length times the width times the height. So let's say we have an example rectangular prism right here. This would be the length, this would be the width, and this would be the height. Now, even if you get, let's say, the length of this edge right here, you can still plug that in for the length because it would still be the same value. So as long as you've been given something that can be equivalent to the length, width, and height, it doesn't have to be exactly in those same spots. So let's say for this example that our length was 5, width was 2, and our height was 3. The volume would be those numbers multiplied. So 5 times 2 times 3. You multiply it and you get 30. So the volume is 30. But remember, volume is measured in units cubed. And since units weren't provided in this problem, you would just say 30 units cubed. If you had, let's say, inches or centimeters, you would say centimeters cubed. Now that I've showed you an example, here are a couple of practice problems for finding the volume of rectangular prisms. I'll meet you on the next slide with the answers, so take a moment to do them right now. So, I hope you did the problems on the previous slide. Here are the solutions being worked out. So for the first problem, you would do the length times width times height. So you do the 5 times 3 times 2, which would give you 30. But remember, be careful, units are centimeters, so 30 centimeters cubed. Make sure you have those units. For the second problem, you would do 7.8 times 0.6 times 8, which would give you 37.44 millimeters cubed. Keep track of those units. For the third, a cube is a rectangular prism, and since cubes have lengths of equal measure, if we know that one side of a cube is 5, then the rest of the sides are also 5. So length, width, and height is all 5, which would give you 125 meters, because the units are meters, cubed. Okay, and for the last problem, here we are given the volume. So here you would plug in all the values you have into the equation. So remember the equation, I'm going to write it off to the side, is volume is length times width times height. So you already have the volume, it's 440, equals the length, which is 11, and the height, which is 10 times the width here. So 440 equals 110 times the width. If you divide 440 by 110, you get 4. So the width is just 4. And remember, units centimeters. Here you don't have the cube because here you're just multiplying one side, like the width is just one side. So you would not need the cubed for the centimeters. It would just be centimeters. So hopefully you got them all right. And we're going to move on to volume of cylinders next. So here's the volume of a cylinder. So let's say you have a sample cylinder right here. Your radius is R. And remember, twice the radius is the diameter in case they give you that. So if you ever get the diameter, divide it by 2 to get your radius. And you'll get R. And here is your height. So let's say your height is 3, your radius is 5, and let's try to solve this problem. So volume equals pi times the radius squared, which would be 25 because 5 squared is 25, times the height is 3. So 25 times 3 gives you 75. So the volume is 75 pi. So if you want to leave it as 75 pi, if the problem allows you, then yes, you can. Some people, they will multiply using their calculator so they can get a precise value for pi. Most problems, if you're not allowed to use a calculator, you can use 3.14 for pi. So let's say we use 3.14 for pi. We would do 75 times 3.14, and that would give you 235.5. You can also have the volume as 235.5. Remember, have your units, and volume is cubed. Here are a few sample problems to test your understanding of the concept. I will go over them on the next slide. Try to attempt them before you move on. Okay, so remember volume is pi r squared height. And for the first question, they give you the radius, they give you the height. So you can just plug and chug. So you do 12.2 times 12.2 to get the radius squared, which is 148.84. And then you're going to multiply by the height, which is 12.2, which would give you 1,815.848 pi. Remember, units, centimeters cubed. Now you can either leave it like this, use 3.14 for pi, or use your calculator to get a more accurate number for pi. Okay, so for the second problem, they give you the diameter, not the radius, so be careful. You have to divide by 2 to get the radius. So your radius is actually going to be 7. So when you plug it in, you get volume equals pi times 7 squared times the height of 18. So if you do 49 times 18, you get 882, so the volume is 882 pi inches cubed. Remember, same thing, pi, 3.14, or calculator. Okay, hopefully you understood that. I'm going to go to the third problem now, I'm going to clear the board so we have room. So for the third problem, here they give you the volume, which is 228 pi, and the height. So if you plug it into the equation, 228 pi equals pi r squared with the height of 2, you can solve for r. So you divide by pi on both sides, so you get 228 equals r squared times 2, divide by 2 on both sides, and you get 114 equals r squared. So r is the square root of 114. And that would be the answer for 3. Now for 4, you would plug in your radius of 5 and your height as usual. So your radius, if you plug it into the equation, your radius is 5. If you square it, you would get 25. And then times your height of 4, which would give you 100 pi, remember inches cubed. You can still keep it as pi, calculator to get more precise, or 3.14. So hopefully you were able to solve these problems and get the concept.